one of my themes in marketing recently is like the Mr. Beastification of everything and like promote a Web3 game. That's really when you're going to get like these massive moments of really, really massive penetration in a way that we wouldn't see otherwise. Welcome to the Games Growth Update, your weekly top news, trends, and insight for the games growth industry, researched and brought to you by Upptic. Learn how our team technology helped to drive millions of players to the world's best games at Upptic.com. Joining me today are my co-host, Warren Woodward, CGO at Upptic, Dan Casale, one of our UA experts here, Sherif, Web3 growth lead at Upptic, and last but not least, Sam Altman, just off his most recent job as CEO and co-founder of OpenAI. Welcome to the show, everyone.
What's up, Xander? What's up, guys?
I love our death.
Special surprise guest. So a more serious note, we have been doing a fair amount of content on the Web3 side. Warren, I know you're fresh off a Deconstructor Fund interview. Everyone go check it out. Want to set the stage for what we're doing here today?
Yeah, so it's interesting timing. So yeah, we just did our first time guesting on the Deconstructor Fund podcast, which came out today. And my interview there was really about what killed the first era of Web3 gaming. And we recorded it a few weeks ago. And I think today we're kind of thinking of this as a companion piece because the last few weeks have been crazy. It's like we had a 180 in crypto overall to some degree, but specifically Web3 gaming is having a really kind of unexpected moment lately. And we're seeing it reflected with prices of gaming related NFTs back out of the dumpster and gaming related tokens going crazy for the first time. So I wanted to have a couple of our experts, Sherif and Dan, join, who spend a lot of time in the trenches, both with our clients and in the space in general. And just talk about like, what the hell is going on? Like, what is this moment right now? Is it real? Are we seeing the next era of Web3 gaming and maybe a healthy era beginning? Or is this just like a momentary opportunistic pump? Like, what is really going on? So maybe to start, Sherif, do you want to start here? Like, what are you seeing in the trenches? What do you make of the moment? Like, what are some of the specific signals that you're seeing? And what do you think of it all?
No, I think it's something that's been a meta that's been thought of for a long time where like, oh yeah, the next cycle is going to be led by Web3 gaming. We already know this is going to happen, but it's a ways away, so let's not do anything about it. But then the realization that a lot of the early access games are like, oh wow, some of them are coming next month or early Q1. So that realization just led people to jump headfirst into it. And especially now with BTC slowly coming up and just that feeling of a healthier market. So I think people that have been on the sidelines for a while are starting to jump back in.
Dan, what's your take? I know you are closer to certain parts of the ecosystem that I don't watch as closely, thinking of like the Solana portion of the ecosystem. What are you seeing in the trenches and what do you make of the current moment we're in?
Yeah, so meme coins are going crazy on Solana right now. Metaverse coins are up, gaming tokens are up. I think a lot of it is built on this impending ETF that's coming out, some of these really cool games that are coming out. I don't know if this is really the start of all this quite yet. Could be a quick fake, but if it's not today, I think it's coming very soon in the next few months.
One thing I've been trying to figure out is where is this activity coming from right now? Like my gut is we're not really dragging mainstream into Web3 gaming yet. It's more like the degens that have been sitting on the sideline, all kind of unanimously agreeing we're back and it's Web3 gaming this time. What do you guys think? Is that take off base? And either way, is it a correct signal, whether we're getting some mainstream adoption or not? Who's actually causing this activity right now?
We're seeing some old friendly faces in some communities we haven't seen for a year poking their head around. And I think it is speculative at the moment, just seeing if this is going to be a big pop moment. Not sure quite yet.
Yeah, so there's been some folks that have looked at like certain doing analyses where it's really not net new wallets. It's been wallets that have been around for a while and maybe some that just haven't been as active in the past. But it's still like the same scope of Web3 participants that maybe were active in the previous full cycle. And I think that's okay because in Web3 gaming in particular, that mainstream adoption isn't necessarily needed for a successful Web3 game because the actual spend per player from a Web3 gamer is a lot more than a traditional gamer in game. So they're able to survive and thrive on the smaller population of people and then slowly build up to onboarding mainstreamers.
So we We have a couple of like pretty interesting concrete examples of the projects we're working on right now. Warren and Sherif, do you want to talk a little bit about what we've seen with the projects we're actually working on, how engagement is up, and like what are the trends we're seeing? Because I know we have insight there that the rest of the market might not be seeing.
Yeah, for sure. So part of why we thought it was important to have this today is a couple of the game launches and projects that we support had their mints recently. And I think we were pleasantly surprised. And Sherif and Dan, you guys played meaningful roles in those launches. Let's get a little bit into specifics. Like, what are some of the specifics that we're seeing in the trenches in both projects that we support directly and signals in the industry that are telling us, like, are we back?
We're seeing some of the old try and two methods and tactics that are working again now that didn't for quite a long time. Really strong content is driving eyeballs and driving engagement and getting people into Discords and chatting and asking questions and trying to learn about these games. I haven't seen that for quite a while now. I think that's going to be a really big catalyst to move forward for sure.
Yeah, and then for the recent projects, shout out first to the Forgotten Runeverse team that's built on an IP that's been in the Web3 space for a while. And so I had some inherent eyeballs, but just the fact that they built a working game that was available to play right after mint got people outside of their ecosystem engaged. I mean, the biggest like bull sign that I saw was Alexis Ohanian tweeting about this Web3 MMORPG at this time. And so that's something that team should really be proud of, that fact. And since then, there's been several gaming projects that have also launched and had recent mints that did exceedingly well compared to previous months in the bear, but then also have a real working product. And I think that's also a key factor.
Yeah, and it was an interesting split test for us because, you alluded to this, Sherif. We did 2 launches this month, and one was with a pretty beloved, at least inside Web3 IP with the Forgotten Runes Wizards Cult and the game built on their IP, Forgotten Runeverse, which honestly was fun as hell. Like I was grinding that every day during the event that they had. But the other project we launched, which is with our friends from Cap Games and a game called Captain and Company, this was a brand new team, brand new IP. And I think, with that being the second of these 2 launches, I personally headed into it like great team, but we headed into it, I think, with a more nervousness. It was a larger collection and, it's a new IP, unknown to most, but this one also really crushed it. And so, like, what are the common threads? Like, how much of that is the project's doing things right and how much of it is the macro? Like, my gut is it's a bit of both. Sherif, you called out a really important thing, which is like, for both of these games, people could see tons of gameplay footage and both games becoming available for play shortly after the mint. And I think that kind of speaks to like a higher bar expected for like which projects people are going to go behind. But I don't know, what do you guys think? How much of it is these projects just being intrinsically strong projects? Obviously, we have some bias here, but how much of it is the macro?
Well, expectations are higher now, right? The space has evolved. People expect more when they do a mint now. And we're seeing closing the gap between Web 2 gaming and Web 3 gaming now. People have to have their games done. They have to have appropriate content and appropriate marketing. They have to do UA efforts now. And that wasn't before. We're seeing people that are going to be partnering up with Steam and Epic that didn't exist before. These are all going to be major catalysts for the space.
Yeah, to echo Dan's point, like the distribution issue that maybe Web3 games were trying to resolve and consider in the past has kind of been resolved now since Epic and Steam are allowing a lot of these games to be on their platform. And so the goal of just making a fun game loop is really the prime mission. And if they achieve that, then they'll get gamers to play, and then with or without the Web3 aspect of the game. But the Web3 aspect is what's also going to bring them additional revenue.
Yeah. One other trend I see between both of these launches being successful is they had very palatable price points. It was clear that both teams were not trying to like extract, both of them had mints for around $30 range, if I recall correctly. And like, that's kind of the price of like buying a decent indie game. So we're closing the gap, I think, on the entry point to participate in Web3 gaming ecosystems, even for the early adopters. And I think that paired with also sending a clear signal from the developers that we're not trying to maximize value extraction from our community like day 0 before the game launch, which I think is a bullish signal for the long term. Okay, if these guys are not trying to do a giant cash grab and they've delivered all of this product, all this development already, it's a good signal that like, okay, these guys are, their eventual business model here is like ship a functioning game. Maybe I'm giving too much credit to the degens for seeing that, but I mean, that's part of what I thought for looking at both of those projects and their mint models.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think, folks that are looking at the risk reward ratio for a mint and seeing risk, it's $30 to proceed. Reward is getting to play this great looking game that I can see the gameplay and it looks fun. And I think a lot of them will jump in and give it a shot. I think there's a couple mints that have actually been waiting through the bear on the sideline and now seeing this kind of gaming meta come about and have decided to start launching their mint at a pretty, decently high price point, 0.1 ETH and above. And so that'll be a true test to see if we truly are entering this gaming meta where we have folks in the Web3 space are willing to put up tangible dollars up for a product.
Can you talk about who those are specifically?
Yeah, I mean, shout out to the Overworld team. They've been building for quite a while, have a large investment from Binance Labs into the project, and have really spent the bear building out this world and token ecosystem. And so from a standpoint of, is this worthwhile? It's a 0.15 ETH mint in a 6K collection, but the demand is already exceedingly high. And that's coming up December 15th. So that's one to keep an eye on to see if that's like a true signal that gamers are really here to play these games.
I mean, do you have a prediction there? Do you think we're going to sell that out?
I think so. I think out of a lot of the gaming projects that are coming Q4, that one really has a lot of strong engagement on their socials. They have a very experienced team and leadership. They have the investment and backing to really give that comfort that the project is in good hands. And so I think a lot of folks are going to jump into that.
Dan, how about you? What are some of the projects that you feel like are going to be leading in this, what looks like 2.0 of Web3 gaming?
Yeah, looks like extraction-based FPS games and TCGs are really going to be running the show moving forward, which is awesome because those are two of my favorite types of games to play. The production value on these games and the funding that they've been able to put together is huge. And I feel for the first time that I can kind of cross from Web3 into Web2 and approach some of my Web2 gaming friends and invite them to play these games. And I think that will carry. And I think the idea behind this is VCs will see this and they'll see the success of these games. And it will be cool to invest in Web3 games again, and there will be a whole new cycle. And we're already hearing of some big players potentially getting into the space as well. Like there's whispers of GTA doing some stuff in Web3 too. So very cool.
Yeah. So Dan, just thinking about some of the projects that we track and talk about, I'm assuming you're referring to like Shrapnel and Parallel, and respectively in the shooter and TCG segment. I think those are two that I think are leading the way with like strong products first and foremost.
Absolutely. Yep.
So I guess the sort of meta question here, is this a Web3 story, or should folks who are not traditional Web3 game players be focusing on this again? That's the real question. It's like, so we go to an arbitrary game studio. Should they be considering this, or is this still just a very niche product that's going to grow over time?
Yeah, I think it's okay for mainstream game developers to stay on the sidelines a bit right now. And the reason is, like, we saw in the 1.0 of Web3 gaming, we saw every studio and publisher like spin off a Web3 gaming initiative. As soon as price started collapsing, they canceled all these, most of them without shipping games. I feel like most of the AAA developers do a better job of iterating and polishing than innovating. And one thing that I will rant on a lot is people copying broken models just to get there fast. And so if for our friends and more traditional game developers, I would say like it's a time to kind of like let these people both innovate and fail in the traditional space, see what works, like try to get some proven learnings. And we still have to find that sustainable model of what a Web3 game looks like for like ongoing live game support. I'm still personally very skeptical that like the token first based gaming models are going to be the default, and I'll rant about that a lot. But I don't know, what do you guys think? Like if you were at a mainstream game developer or would you advise them like jumping back in the space right now or approaching with more caution?
To your point, I think there's a lot of things that are being tested in this next run here. Interoperability, token, play to earn, ownership on these games. I think that there's going to be a lot of things tested. I'm not sure what's going to stick. I think that there's somewhere between 10% and 90% of Web3 functionality that will stay forever. I have absolutely no idea where on that spectrum it will land.
The interoperability one is really interesting because that's something that we've heard a lot about, and like we've not really seen, at least I don't know of any place where we've seen that actually really work. And so that's the piece that I'm really, really excited to see. That would be like a really awesome innovation that I think a lot of really cool gameplay mechanics that come out. It actually makes sense in the context of Web3. Sherif, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think on a more basic level, traditional gaming companies are going to jump in when the revenue's there. Right. So right now, the total market cap for all gaming tokens on CoinMarketCap is around 12 to 13 billion, where you compare to something like Doge, which is like 73 billion as a market cap, just one token. So if you see this gaming push happen and we reach as an entire niche group, 40, 50 billion, I think you're going to start seeing some of these companies start to consider it.
Definitely. So maybe next, one thing we could explore, I think a lot of what we've talked about right now is kind of inside the Web3 ecosystem, the people that are already here. Why are they getting excited again? At some point, we have to grow the addressable market. Yeah. And so maybe next we could get some predictions on how that breaks through. We talked about a couple of Upptic's partners that are still in that phase of marketing towards Web3 natives and some of the recent work we've done there. One thing I'm excited about in Q1 is one of our other partners, Immutable. We've got 2 of their games that are going to be launching on mobile, Guild of Guardians, which is like the first launch of it, and then Gods Unchained. Nothing official has been announced, but it's expected that will be coming to mobile sometime late this year to early next year as well. And here the play is really to see if we have products that have the polish and accessibility and fun that we can start leveraging more of our traditional performance marketing and mainstream growth tactics to bring people on through these. I think this is what's really has not been tested at scale yet. And I'm curious if you guys, are we on the cusp of that era? Are the products at that point yet? Or setting some, maybe our own partners aside to be Swiss about this? Like, what is the timeline? And do you guys have any thoughts on who might be these products that first break through to a larger general addressable market?
Well, it's starting, right? You've got some idle games that are getting to be very good now. I think Wolf Game, unfortunately, was a little bit of a failed experiment, but some people have refined that product and it's working. And they've already proved out 7-8 months of stickiness, and it's been pretty cool. And that's the heist game on Solana.
Dan, do you know what their player base is like, just from a numerical size? It's okay if you don't. I'm just curious.
About 15,000 users.
15,000?
Yeah. We're seeing some very cool TCG games coming out right now. I'm extremely excited for Shrapnel. In terms of kind of bridging the gap over to Web 2, we're seeing influencers jumping in, major influencers jumping in now. We've got Dr. Disrespect that's going to be stewarding a game very soon. He's a huge content producer. I've seen clips of him actually kind of like making fun of the game a little bit with frustrating points. He's testing it. The game looks good. He's got a pretty ravenous audience. I think that everyone's going to try that game out. I think the ability to start making crypto games cool is about to happen,
Yeah, and then speaking of whispers, as Dan mentioned, there's been a lot of discussion of, traditional gaming companies that might be in the background, but assisting some of these Web3 players to experiment basically through these companies. So if GTA does, end up including something, I'd personally be surprised, but that would be a great signal. There's been whispers of a project I mentioned earlier, Overworld, where they have a traditional gaming company assisting them in the development of the game, but to just further that. And I'm sure they'll announce that closer to the mint. So if that's the case, then I think that's something that we'll start to see. But then, I agree with Dan. Those that have name recognition through some influencer or KOL, like Dr. Disrespect, or through the experience of the team, like Godzilla Games, that just has like a who's who from the FPS traditional game companies. So like those are going to be leading the way.
Yeah. I think the way we're really going to break through to the sort of traditional gaming audience is when the rails are less painful, right? And so when we can do this through Steam, when we can do this through the App Store, if we can ever do it through the App Store, we do it through Epic, that's when it's really, really going to make a huge difference. Because I was reminded this week doing these mints how painful it is to do a mint still. It's still not super easy for the average consumer, and I've done it like 10 times.
Well, and we're seeing, I think, finally some meaningful progress there. Immutable is doing some cool things with the Immutable Passport to remove the need for any sort of prior Web3 knowledge to join it with like traditional account management. And then we're seeing even more extreme things like with our partner Mistin Labs, who make the Sui blockchain of wallets seamlessly created in the background and the user having to take zero action to have a wallet established and start owning assets in that wallet created by the developer, but then that they can claim those assets and remove them later if and when they're ready to. So it does seem like we're learning and getting like the proof of concepts of more seamless ways to come in if and when you're ready. And maybe more importantly, that you don't have to ever jump over that hurdle if you don't want to anytime soon.
Yeah, the Reddit model.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I think the Dr. Disrespect point is also really, really interesting because, I mean, if you think about sort of one of my themes in marketing recently is like the Mr. Beastification of everything, in that like that you start with a personality and sort of any product flows from that. And I think someone like Dr. Disrespect or like, God forbid, Mr. Beast, but to step in and like promote a Web3 game, that's really when you're going to get like these massive moments of really, really massive penetration in a way that we wouldn't see otherwise. Wrapping it up, any last thoughts from the team, where the future's headed?
It's nice to see a little bit of the sorrow gone from the space and people starting, I mean, just it's gaming. Like people have to be having fun or else like, why are we here? And so it's been cool to see like some joy and fun in Web3 gaming pop back up. I think as some of the bad actors are forced out of the space and we're seeing like engaging fun games start to ship. I have no idea if this moment's going to hold into like early next year, but I do think we're kind of getting a hint of what the path forward will be for Web3 games.
Awesome.
Yeah, it's exciting to see this wave of games being shipped. It's exciting to start conversations with projects that are starting to look at what's being shipped and saying, cool, this is this mousetrap. How do we make a better mousetrap? And start looking at the next phase of gaming that's coming out. It's very fun.
Yeah, this has been something that's been a focus of ours and mine just from a pure interest in the space. So I'm just really excited to see positive statements all over my Twitter timeline nowadays. So that's always a positive.
Awesome.
Yeah, Dan, Sherif, thanks so much for making some time today, guys. We know you're both super busy with the respective launches and projects you're working on. As always, the podcast was brought to you here by our team at Upptic. At Upptic, we do things to make games grow, and that's games kind of across technologies, across platforms. We talked about Web3 a lot today. That's definitely just a part of our business. But I think we just pride ourselves in keeping an eye on where games are going. So if you're working on a PC game, mobile free-to-play game, Web3 game, we have experts in all those areas. We support on creative, on data science and analysis, on growth marketing of all kinds, from performance to more organic, unpaid strategies. So if you have a really cool game, we'd love to meet you and learn more about it and see how we can help. You can reach us on our website. That's upptic.com, upptic.com.
Talk soon.